Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cardboard Hands. We are back again after a small hiatus with Collecticon and other life events happening, retrospects traveling the world, and myself traveling up and down California many, many times, expectedly and unexpectedly. We are back at it again, hopefully weekly as we try to do this time on my channel. But how you doing, Retro? How you doing, Mr. Giovanni? It's been a while since we talked, but what's new with you, man? What's going on?
Doing good, man. Little late coming back. Was on vacation to Hawaii for a week. Had the little dolphin swimming there. Hanging out. But glad to be back, man. Had a good time for sure, but was tough to turn my work brain off a little bit. But it was cool. I mean, I put my eBay on vacation mode and but I did have some stuff like sell right because we left, or no, we left Sunday, and I had some stuff end on like Saturday and Sunday on auction. So I like kind of pre-packaged it a little bit, and then my mom came over while we were gone, and I talked to her on the phone and told her like how to ship it and how to print the label. And I made it easy for her so she didn't have to do shit, but it was nice because like once those orders were knocked out, everything, all the other orders that came in for the rest of the week, I didn't have to worry about fulfilling until I got back. So that was nice of her to do. But yeah, man, what about you? You went to Disney, you did a card show. There's LA Collecticon. I missed out on LA Collecticon going to Hawaii, which I guess that's okay to miss for. But how did Collecticon go for you?
I want to get into all that, but I feel like I want to hear more about this Hawaii trip because I feel like I've never heard of you going on a vacation, and much less a Hawaii vacation. And I actually go to Disneyland literally like every other month because I go down to every time since our season. We call them magic key holders. That's what they call us down there. I don't know what the hell that's supposed to the
They need to start
implications.
hooking you up with like Lorcana promo packs. Like to me, that would be such a value add. Like for people that have the season passes to Disneyland, like they should be hooking you guys up with
I did
Lorcana.
buy quite a few Lorcana packs while I was down there because they
Okay.
had just restocked Disney parks with the first chapter, which is kind of random because everywhere else is getting like into the Inklands, which is the third one. So I did capitalize on that, and I have a nice stockpile of first chapter to sell at events and things, which I really like because I was running low on those, and that's starting to tick up in price. The boxes are like $250+, so those
Wait,
booster
you
packs.
said the Inklands is?
No, the first
Oh, the
chapter
first.
ones.
Oh, okay.
Inklands is still only like $100. So yeah. But me going to Disney is like nothing. I honestly, I really do want to hear about what you did and where you went in Hawaii because I feel like a lot of the other people, it would kind of tie into a little bit of like later on in the year going to Hawaii because that's sort of what my mind goes to is like where the world's happening there. But what did you do or where did you go? Because Hawaii is more than just one, it is one big island, but there's other islands that people often go to. And I actually had the benefit when I was younger of doing like a cruise to all five, like the five main islands of Hawaii, spent 2 to 3 days on each one during the cruise, kind of docking at the island and going on doing excursions. I was only like 12 years old, so I was really young. I didn't really experience, I feel like, the whole vibe, but I definitely got a vibe. And I want to go back really bad because traveling is something I'm passionate about. But I want to hear your take. Like, where did you go? What island were you on?
So we went to Kauai, and what's cool about Hawaii is so Hawaii is the mainland, right? Like it's
Hmm.
the like Hawaii encompass, like it'll say Hawaii on the address, but like Hawaii is the big island, right? And then you've got the other islands. The cool thing about and they're all kind of like their own country, you know, individual from each other. And we were actually talking to some locals, and they were talking to us about they tried to put in like a they called it like a super ferry or something to where you could travel in between islands, and the people of Kauai were actually like protesting it. They were like doing crazy stuff, dude. Like they were out like swimming on surfboards, making a line so that the ferries couldn't get through. They were slashing tires. They were doing all sorts of stuff. and a large part of that was because they
Keep
didn't
those
want.
howlies out.
Well, probably keeping the Howleys out a little bit, but mainly because they were trying to keep predator species out, right? So not like plants, animals, things like that. Like people didn't want mongooses coming over to Kauai because it would kill the chicken population. Like part of the reason there's so many chickens and roosters in Kauai is because there's no like nothing eats them, right? So they get hit by cars, unfortunately, every once in a while, and things like that. But there's no predator animal that really eats chickens, and it's cool, man. I mean, like we went on a tour through this like massive piece of property. It was sort of this like they call them ATVs, but they're more just like off-road vehicles in general. Dude, the suspension is like 3 feet long, so like you're going down these hills and there's huge potholes and you're like driving through rivers and on like it was kind of scary at first. Again, like I drive a Prius, so like you hit a pothole, you feel it in the Prius. And so I was kind of like going slow at first, but once you realize that the vehicle can take it, you're just like smashing it. It was super fun, man. But anyway, so we went through this like this tour through this big property. Everything is grass fed. All the cows are eating grass. Just luscious fields, right, of grass that they're eating. They're
That's the thing about
happy.
Kauai. Kauai, I feel like, I've been to the islands. Kauai felt like the most rainforesty, luscious, like
Yeah,
the most
rural
wild and
country.
most nature driven of all of the
Yeah.
islands. So I can understand. So that's what I want the viewer to think of this like Hawaii is already, it looks like Jurassic Park, but Hawaii feels like very much so looks like Jurassic Park.
Well, it's literally where they filmed Jurassic Park. They filmed Indiana Jones there, and that was like part of the tour too. They were like,
Mhm.
it wasn't the tour like it wasn't as touristy, which is nice because I'm like, whatever. It was more like the history of
It's
Hawaii and
the
stuff like that.
lesser touristy of the islands because you don't
Yeah,
have those big attractions, not big cities and stuff. It's not like
yeah,
Oahu. Yeah.
no big cities. There's like kind of one main. I mean, you can literally circumnavigate the island in like 3 hours. So it's definitely more rural, but yeah, we would stop at different spots and they'd be like, oh, you see that hill over there? That's where Indiana Jones runs out in the first movie. And it was actually crazy, dude. This one piece of information, they filmed part of the first Jurassic Park movie, and it was during this like really famous hurricane that happened in the 90s. And it was like a state of emergency, everything was shut down. But I guess like Spielberg is just like fearless. This dude took his camera out in the middle of the hurricane and was filming. So I guess there's this part where like the guy from Seinfeld like does something in the movie. I can't remember, but anyways, like apparently if you watch close enough in the movie, you can see the camera quality switch because Spielberg filmed it like on a hand cam
Uh-huh.
during this
So
like
that
crazy.
scene where all the storm was raging in Jurassic Park,
Yeah,
where
remember when he's trying to like
that was a
steal
real
the
hurricane?
Yeah, remember when he's trying to steal the like he's trying to steal the DNA,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Making those.
Smuggling it out of the park, and he's like getting it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember the
that's a
scene
real hurricane.
vividly. Yeah,
That's a real hurricane. So it was cool.
Spielberg, man, he's something else.
I know. I was like, damn, okay, shouts out. Because when you think of like directors, you think of like people sitting in that chair and pointing and be like, do this. But this dude was actually out there making it happen. So I was like, all right, shouts out to you, Spielberg. Respect. Like,
Well, you know, Jaws was supposed to be like more of a monster type movie instead of like a suspenseful type movie. And the only reason that it was the type of movie that like dun all suspense in your head where you don't see the shark for the first, I don't think you see the shark for the first like 30 plus minutes of the movie. But you still like know it's there and that suspense is there. It wasn't planned to be that way. Spielberg changed it on the fly because when he got to the set, there were three big sharks, animatronic sharks that they built. Spielberg was such a crazy MF that he insisted like that authenticity, right? That he wanted to do it in the ocean. So the animatronics were not planned to be in the ocean when they were built. And the shark, if you ever look at it, it's super, super glitchy. they would go on a 12-hour day of shooting and get less than 3 or 4 hours of actual footage, and then they'd have to edit that all down because the shark would break down so much. So
Mm,
he changed the
okay.
entire script of the movie so that they didn't feature the shark at all, hardly. All this money they put into animatronics because it would just look corny and bad, and he made it more of a psychological suspense, in which case made it hold up over time so much better. Jaws holds up. The practical effects of it, like the suspense that it is, it's more of a psychological thriller now. Makes you afraid. You see a body of ocean or water, and you're like, I ain't going in that. There's a shark in there. That's like, to this day, I think of that because that movie, and that's a lot of people, and that's Spielberg for you. He was dedicated, but that craziness, that crazy genius, it leads to that sort of innovation. So I feel like that's very interesting too. Sorry, I love film. So
No, no, you're good. You're good, man. It was like I said, it was really interesting to learn all that history and not to get like too not to get too political with it, but when I was learning about the history of Hawaii, it really bummed me out because it's brutal, man. And like in going back to that hurricane that happened, so there's a famous hotel that's kind of like in central in Kauai, and it was wiped out during this hurricane. So when you go there, it's kind of like it gives you like music video vibes now. It's completely wiped out. It's just like bare bones. There's like graffiti and stuff on it, and it's literally just the metal, right? So it's the frame of the building, but there's no like doors or anything. It's just like a metal sort of structure that, and apparently like the government tries to, or people try to buy it. The government is like, thought about like rebuilding the hotel, and people constantly protest the rebuilding of the hotel because apparently the hotel is built on top of burial grounds, basically like people's ancestors burial grounds, and there's this huge fence surrounding the property, and spray painted on the fence it says Hawaii is not America. And it really, like, I don't know, man, like it just kind of hit for me. I was like, damn, like this, I don't know how to explain. Like I don't know like what you can say on YouTube without us getting in trouble, or the algorithm tanking us. But it really sort of like reinforced to me because I have Native American in my family. Like my grandpa is a member of like the Shoshone tribe in Wyoming and stuff like that. And so I've always been like acutely aware of just that sort of situation. And again, I know that Hawaii's GDP is probably largely made up of tourism and commodities, agricultural things that they produce. So I understand that, having the connection maybe to the United States is beneficial in different sort of like economic ways and things like that. But I also like I understand the sentiment of them feeling, and I mean, even going back to the history of it, apparently in like the 90s, Congress had to do some big meeting basically saying like to Hawaii, like, hey, we're sorry that we never, like, y'all never officially said it was cool to be part of the United States.
To those
So
watching, I mean, anyone who hasn't been to Hawaii or isn't aware of like the whole situation, we forcibly made the Queen of Hawaii, the last Queen of Hawaii, sign over basically the end of her reign, the end of Hawaii, and sign over the state to America without her real consent. They're like standing
yeah,
over
they
her.
kidnapped her. They
Yeah,
kidnapped
it was
her.
like
Like,
at gunpoint essentially. Like they had no real choice, even though it was signed by. It's a very sad story about the acquisition, as it were, of Hawaii, and I think it has to do with like military. Like we really needed it for positioning in the military in the Pacific, and so it's very important for us to have that. So it's like,
land agriculture, agriculturally too, like sugar cane, cocoa, pineapple, all that stuff. Like,
but it was
honest,
not welcomed and is still not welcomed and is very, very a sore subject by the natives who still live there. and that is why there's such a sentiment against howlies and the encroachment of the tourists and stuff. So like, I don't think that's per se too controversial, and I don't think that's going to get anyone canceled. It's just the fact of the matter is
Yeah.
we took it from them in a way that was like very much so, like you said, that we took from the Native Americans, but that was hundreds of years ago. This was not hundreds of years ago. Like this is
No,
very, very,
no, this is
yes.
like maybe 80 to 100 years. And like, I mean, to be honest, man, like
They
we eat
knew what they were doing. They
oh,
knew.
100%. We eat pretty good produce. Like we're not eating like name brand produce. I mean, we're lucky in Washington because we get a lot of like fresh produce, but I will never eat another Dole product ever again because what that family did is it's just evil, man. Like it's just evil, you know. And I'm not like I think I've made it very clear on this podcast. I'm not anti-capitalist, anti-big business, anti-corporation, but the stuff that they did would not fly nowadays, like by any means. It was just evil and very predatory. So yeah, man, it was just tough. Again, like it's not like it ruined the trip for me or anything, but it
Oh
was
no,
just
no, not at all.
learning
But that's the
learning all
nature.
the
That's reality, though.
yeah, like learning all the history and like seeing these people struggle and like a lot of this and people like, oh well, why are you protesting a hotel? And it's like because because you're building this on top of people's ancestors. You like that's wild, like it's so it yeah, it was just like it was a good reset. But overall, man, like the trip just maybe to like move away from from the depressing political stuff, but it was a good trip. It's weird though, like the second day that we were there, I sort of had this like mild depression kick in a little bit, and I think it's because I didn't have anything that I like needed to do. Like I couldn't work and I wasn't working. And so because I didn't have something to do, I kind of felt like a little aimless or something. Um,
Okay, but you had to bury that depression in delicious food. Can I ask you a
yeah.
quick checklist of foods that you potentially ate while
Oh
you were there?
man.
Did you
So
eat okay while you were there?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And we got so okay, so here's the other thing too. People depending on where you're from, like a lot of people have this idea that like food trucks are like fast foody or similar to like lower class sort of food. There's a lot of food trucks in Hawaii, and let me be the first to tell you, they're better than the restaurants in a lot
Did
of cases.
Did you
Like
have
these food
garlic
trucks,
shrimp from the food trunks, the shrimp trucks or whatever? Did you have some of that?
we had some shrimp. We went to this
Okay,
one place called Tony's Catch
too
that
good
was
too.
super fire. It's kind of like in Portland they have like a food truck. I don't even know what you like a commune almost like
I know
it's
what
it's
you're
like
talking about. It's like a gathering where they all get together and
yeah, like
hang out.
all
Yeah,
these different food trucks. You can get like sweets, or you can get like savory baked goods, Thai food, Mexican food, like all this different stuff, all in the same area from these different food trucks. It was a similar situation. They had like Thai food. They had like this place was like a fish spot, and we got these fish tacos. It's right there on the beach. So you can just sit there on your little table eating your fish tacos, looking at the beach. Man, just phenomenal. Fresh food. And
mm.
it's crazy too. Like they treat you like it's in a restaurant. Like, homie, we sat down at the table. Homie brought the food over to us. We're eating.
Mm.
And then he comes back like 5 or 10 minutes later and he's like, hey, just checking on you guys. Is everything like he was a waiter in a restaurant? This
But
is
island
they're running.
hospitality, baby.
Yeah, man, like it was bomb. So definitely don't like if y'all listening ever go to Hawaii or especially Kauai in general, do not poo-poo the food trucks. Like the
Mhm.
food trucks are fire. You will get some great food, coffee, donuts, the whole 9 yards. But
Oh,
the
yeah, okay.
best
Did you have malasadas while you were there? That's that Hawaiian style donut thing.
may
It's like
well
a
we
filled
did
donut. It's like filled with something.
it wasn't well, we didn't have any donuts that were filled with anything, but we went to this place. I want to say it was called Sunrise Coffee. And my girlfriend had watched a bunch of like travel vlogs and stuff beforehand, so we kind of knew some places to go. But they had
She's
coffee,
a
but then
keeper. She's a keeper then.
yeah, no, she is for sure. But so they have a truck that does the coffee, and then right next to them, they have a I don't even know, like it looked like a almost like piece of an airplane or something, but it was renovated and it was like a donut truck, and they made the donuts fresh. bro, these donuts were stupid. And I'm not like a huge sweets guy, but dog, like I'm telling, these donuts were nuts. Like
Okay, Hawaiian
fresh,
donuts.
cooked.
That's fine. That may not be called malasada, but
Yeah,
it's close enough for you're hitting the list. So that's 3 for 3.
yeah,
Okay, what about shaved ice?
cooked in coconut oil, and the best one was ube, which
Ooh,
is Japanese sweet
yeah,
potato. It's kind of like
it's
purple. Oh my
purple. Yeah,
god,
yeah.
dude, it was so good. So, but the best place we went, hands down, and it was a risk because it was low. It was only like 4.4, and it was kind of like a fine dining sort of restaurant. And I was like, I don't know, but the menu looked crazy. We went there, dog. That was the best restaurant we hit the whole time. And I'm like, why do these people have such a low rating? Like, who had a bad experience here? Like, this food is insane. Like, we got this, man. Like, we got
What
this
kind of a
tuna.
place?
It was kind of like fine dining Asian type deal, like fresh fish and stuff like that. But we got this. I want to say it was like yellowtail tuna, and it was cut like super thin, and it was sitting in this like miso-y kind of like bright acidic umami sort of sauce, and then it had like some arugula with it, and you would just have like the arugula for the bitterness, the tuna, the fresh tuna, and then the sauce with it, and like, oh man, crazy good bite. The drinks were good. I'm not like my drink is like an old fashioned, so I don't usually get like foo drinks, but I'm like, I'm in Hawaii, whatever. I'll get a foo drink. Drinks were bomb. Food was insane. Um, that was the best night for sure. Like that food was crazy. So, but that was really the only like fine dining I would say that we really wanted to hit up. The other ones were kind of like far away, like an hour and a half away. So the rest of the time we just sort of hit like regular type stuff. But great tacos, just like a lot of great Asian food in general. What's cool about Hawaii too is it's a mixture of so many different like Pacific Islander and Asian people. And so like the fusion of the food and culture it's insane. Like it's everything you want, like all sort of like mixed together, man. So it was great for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those places that I think it's expensive to visit for a reason because it's a delightful place to go. It's just
And okay, last thing. Okay, so the airport is like wide open. Like it's wide open. Like you can literally see outside. Like the security is way compared to SeaTac. Like the security, it's just so much more laid back. But the crime on the island is almost like non-existent. You know what I mean? So it was like entering a different world. Like it was
yeah.
just nuts, man. Like I don't know. It was and I get to write part of the trip off because I did some business while I was there. I met an owner of a local card shop and lined up some business with him. So that was cool too. I got to get a little work in while I was there. So that was cool.
Couldn't help yourself, could you? You just
I
couldn't
mean,
help.
I knew I wanted to go do that for sure, but it was fun. Sure, like one of the days we were just kind of walking around and stuff, and so we stopped by the card store and went in there and same sorts of trends as what's happening. But you might get a kick out of this. So he like 6 months ago or like a year ago, he was saying one of the things that was flying for him because I guess it was just a trend on Kauai and Pogs. People were coming in playing Pogs, buying Pogs like by the thousands, dude. And he was going on eBay buying lots of Pogs and then selling the Pogs in the store. And I'm just like, what? That is nuts, man. But other than that, same sort of stuff is popping, right? Like One Piece is popping.
Yeah.
Dude, Magic the Gathering randomly is popping in Hawaii. Pokemon, obviously, a little bit of Lorcana. So just interesting to see what trends are going on over there. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's an island, so it's interesting because they have their own little thing, their own little economy going on there. That's what's kind of fun about it. But do you think you're going to go back for Worlds this year? Is got to be your only time to Hawaii? You think for the year?
I got a lot coming up this year. So I don't know, man. Like it would like I'm sure I have because what it's in Honolulu, so I'm sure I have like a timeshare in Honolulu I could stay at for free. Like it's a maybe, but it's a probably no. So while I was there, I actually got a call back from a wealth management firm that I applied for. So I'm kind of like going through the interview process with them right now. Between like starting that because if I do decide to take that position, I'll have to start studying for. Well, I want to start studying. You need to work. Oh man. Okay, so you basically like there's a sponsorship that certain financial institutions have through FINRA, which is basically like a government oversight agency for financial institutions. And in order to get certain certifications that you need to work in finance, you need to work for a FINRA sponsored business, basically. So like if I decide to take that position, I'll be studying for like, you know, a CFA or a CFP, plus all these different series licenses that you need to buy and sell securities, bonds, life insurance, all that sort of stuff. So I have that potentially coming up, plus like, you know, working potentially like a 40-hour a week position, and then school will start back up in the later half of the year. So I'm kind of feeling a little stressed out right now and a little stretched pretty thin right now as it is. So it might not be in the cards for me. No pun intended. But yeah, I'm feeling a little stretched, a little thin right now. So I gotta figure out what's most important and how to manage my time effectively. So
Yeah, I'm feeling likewise with what I have coming up. Unlikely that I'm going to be making it to the Hawaii Worlds as much as I would like to. I'm even canceling some of my Collecticon trips that I thought that I was going to be able to make it, that I'm going to have to unfortunately maybe shoulder for next year. Just because there are many opportunities that I have locally that I'd like to rather take than travel across the country. Like, for example, Chicago, which was one that I was very much so looking forward to, and I still would really like to go. Maybe, unfortunately, getting shouldered or put back onto the table for next year potentially, because there's something around that time locally that I can go to that I think is really a prevalent show that I enjoy, that I would not have to travel for and be away from the family. And you know, my pets are getting old. I have a 13-year-old cat and a 11-year-old cat, and then like a 15-year-old dog, and it's hard to be away from them for longer than like a few days at a time. And when it's as frequent as it has been, having to find a pet sitter and everything, it just adds up because they take medicine and everything. So it's much more beneficial for me to stay local. So I think I am going to do this next year while my animals are really old, while I kind of need to be around for them, probably limit the amount of trips I take. So the only big trip that I plan to take for the year is going to be probably Card Party. That one's already planned, and that's in Orlando. And that's going to be fun, but it won't be too long. It'll be like a 5-day trip, probably add a day or two on, you know, before and after the convention. But that's, I think, the long and short of it. Other than that, I think with, like, for example, Hawaii, if I went down to Hawaii for Worlds, I wouldn't have the opportunity to sell because there's not really a vending spot down there. So I wouldn't be able to recoup much of the cost that way. Sure, it's still a write off and it helps in that regard, but I would like to be able to actually make money while I'm there too, not just like, you know, use it as a tax write off.
yeah, I
But
mean there's definitely like opportunities to make money with worlds, but I think that it's not like a I mean, you can make money off worlds without going to worlds. Like a big part of the value going to, I mean, same thing with Card Party is just like the networking opportunities. But I mean, like going to worlds is it's not. And I think a lot of people too that went to Japan for worlds too. Like, I mean, they were able to make some money buying promo packs and things like that. But I think a lot of people sort of had like a rude awakening going to card stores and, you know, seeing that the card stores over there are priced slightly above market, just like the card stores over here are. Again, there's things to find for sure. I'm not trying to say that at all, but it's just not it's not the same for sure. So
yeah,
card party would be good.
those promo packs you can get for 100 or 150 bucks more than what they sell for in person, just buying them online when they come out, typically speaking. So it's not worth the cost of
Yeah.
traveling at that point.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on the local stuff. I actually finally did last thing, and then we can hop into crossfire. But I actually finally did my first local vending this last Saturday, and it was just like a light bulb, man. I was like, man, Josh has just been hammering me on this for so long, you know, singing its praises. And to your point, like between, I mean, you still do well at Collecticon for sure.
Mhm.
Like between, even after like hotel and all the stuff you got to pay for, like Collecticons print if you're going to the right location, but being able to drive 45 minutes, pay $50 for a table, and print local, and make connections locally, it's just like, dog, why would I fly 6 hours? Like I can just do this stuff weekly locally. So um yeah, I definitely making a local presence for yourself. I think the bigger shows, again, you can still make some good money for sure, but I think it's more of like a networking opportunity. And also like you're limited on what you can bring, right? Like most of a good percentage of my sales at this local show was like sealed product.
Hmm.
And that was kind of my goal anyways. Like I've been stocking up on sealed product to sell at local shows so that I can sort of like establish myself as like somebody like basically like a sealed wholesaler. Um, and so I wanted to meet like streamers, local card shop owners, things like that, and like sealed moves, and I can give people a better deal. I mean, I was undercutting everybody that even had boxes in there by like so much because I don't have to ship it, I don't have to pay fees. Um, and you can't do that, right? Like bringing 30 boxes to Collecticon, like that's an entire suitcase by itself, you know what I mean? So you want to bring like that bigger stuff, and it's just not really feasible. Whereas with the local thing, you just load the car up, you can bring it all in, set your table up, a little bit of raw, a little bit of graded, maybe you got some mystery packs, maybe you got boosters, and then you got your booster boxes. And um, even though you're not gonna, you might not do like 20 grand in a weekend or whatever, like you're still doing pretty good, and like your overhead is nothing basically, So it's I definitely see your reasoning there, and my light bulb moment has happened with vending locally for sure. So looking
It's
forward to
and
doing
there's
more of
something to be
that.
said about being able to go back and sleep in your own bed if it's a 2-day convention and going back the next day. It just feels like you get more rested and everything. And like for me, I have a family with my animals and my fiance and everything, and so it's nice to be able to go back to them and not have to be away from home as well. So I think that that's the allure for me. And being on the West Coast where I'm at, I have so many opportunities that are so good and so close and so frequent that it makes less and less sense for me to go travel across the country for these other big shows that when it comes down to it, I don't end up doing as well, so much better that it makes it worth that time of being away. So,
Yeah.
that being said, though, I probably will be making an appearance at some other shows in other places that I don't expect just because I love the stuff. And if there's nothing else going on, then I probably can't help myself. So
I
I
think
did.
Card Party is a good one for you to go to. I think you're gonna do well at Card Party. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That I was so proud of you when I got that text. I was like, all right, my boy, let's go. Like oh man,
So one thing
tell
that
the
happened
story.
at Collecticon that I'll say that would not have happened at a local show is that I traded my Urza Saga booster box. I did a straight up trade for a Jungle Unlimited booster box. They're about equal value, like looking on the open market and everything. In my opinion, the Urza's booster box is far superior, far more rare, and far better, but there's no one on this planet except for the guy that I sold it to who's going to actually open that box and crack the packs. But apparently, the guy that I traded it to, right after I traded it to him, he cracked it. He cracked the box and put all the packs in his case and is just selling Urza's packs from the box now. So if you ever wanted to buy one of my booster packs that was in my box of cards that was up there for years and years in the podcast, go to Tier 1 Games. I think it's either Tier 1 Cards or Tier 1 Games. They're a Magic retailer primarily. They're on social. And he's selling packs. He was out of Urza Saga. He was licking his lips, looking at my Urza's box across. He was across the way, and I saw him eyeing it the whole time. And he had a whole booth full of Magic there, and he had this one lone Jungle box, and it was just sitting there in his booth of Magic. And then you look across, and I had a booth full of Pokemon. And this one box of Urza Saga just sitting there. Nobody knew why it was there. And at the end of one day, I went over. I was like, "Hey, so what's the deal with your Jungle Box? What are you asking?" He had 8 grand or best offer on it, And I had the exact same thing on my Urza's box because I had just priced it about. I was like, I would take 7 grand probably, or 7,200 is kind of where it's priced at online last sold. And he's like, yeah, I'm at the exact same place with the jungle. I have it at 8 grand, but I'd probably take 7 grand. I've had a couple shows, and I personally can break a jungle box, I know, and make money and sell it in parts if I wanted to at any Collecticon. So I thought a lot about it that night at Collecticon, and then the next day thought about it some more, and I think he thought about it too. And at the end of the Collecticon, he just came over. He's like, "So I thought about it, and if you wanted to, I'd do a straight up trade for you. I'd trade it right away." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we talked about it. I got a couple second opinions on the box. It looked good, it looks good to
You did
me.
not. Oh, okay. Second opinions on the box. I was like, you
On
did
the
not need a
more
second
than
opinion on the deal.
the gentleman from the game store he's been in business a long time, a lot longer than I have. He had like 5 employees with him. He's a really trustworthy guy. He personally guaranteed the authenticity. He said if I broke it or sold it to someone and they broke it with me there live and cut it open, if it was fake, he would then buy it basically and say, because he was confident that it was real. I'm confident it's real after looking at it. So is the other, couple of people I had look at it. So I'm very confident on it. But it's always nice to have that level of guarantee, because I gave him that guarantee with my Urza's box because I pulled it out of the case myself from the game store years ago when I bought it. So I could personally guarantee that my box was like legit. So he gave me the same guarantee, which is nice, and I trust him for it. So that made me feel good about it. We both felt good about the transaction. I do feel like, even though I think the Urza's box is a better box, in my opinion, I'd rather have it. I think I got the better of the deal, value wise and liquidity wise. And I can see a world where the box goes up, this box goes up, and that one continues to go down in price. So
Yeah, the sentimentality for sure with the Urzas, but you traded up in value and liquidity getting
yeah,
into the jungle box. So
and it's all a part of my goal of eventually selling it for the most profit I can, obviously. So like, I'm getting married this year. It's no secret. And that's one of the things, having an extra few grand to put towards the wedding, and then the rest of it to inject into my business to have some extra added liquidity. I think I'd be able to flip and make up the cost that I'd be taking out for my wedding in that extra few $1,000s I inject into my business for liquidity that it would add, instead of just sitting up there on a shelf going down in price, which is what the box was doing when it was in Urza's box. Now I can at least, box break it. I can maybe make it go, see if it does go up in price, just sell it sealed.
let's
So thank you. So there's a lot of options with it. So yeah, I feel like that was an overall win. That if I didn't sell anything at the Collecticon, it was worth just going to make that trade. And I didn't think it would happen. I was my first Collecticon bringing my box to, but it just ended up working out because where I was and who I was near. Because the guy was across from me who I traded it with. So
I hope you don't break that box, because if you do, I might have to support you and buy a pack, Doc. I need that Snorlax. I need that Snorlax in a
bro,
PSA
the
50.
unlimited jungle hollows in the population report and value wise in jungle compared to first edition is stupid, dude. Like, unlimited has so much better value because some of those, like the Vaporeon, the Snorlax, the Pidgeot, a lot of those hollows in jungle unlimited are even lower population than first edition, and makes them for set collectors incredibly valuable. And the packs are so much lower in price. The unlimited stuff is so much easier to get. It's just like, to me, I'm always an unlimited junkie, and specific with that set jungle specifically, the populations on those and the prices on like the Vaporeon, I mean, all that kind of stuff. And if there's a no symbol like error box, if that box happens to have the no set symbol error instead of the regular ones, good night, man. That's a ridiculous upgrade. So
I'm looking at the pop reports right now for Snorlax. For
it's like 40, right? It's like 46 or something. Or
so for first edition in a 10, it's 74, and then like you said, in unlimited, it's only 36, and then in for no symbol, it's also 36. So like
Yeah.
that's and then when you go to 9, it's like 585
It's
unlimited nines.
hard, man. The unlimited is a
Yeah.
really hard tin to get. So, like, out of a box break, I feel like Jungle has some of the most upside when it comes to grading. And you get the Pikachu and the Eevee in Jungle. It's great for common. I mean, I love Jungle. I don't know why it's one of the lower value WotC sets, probably because there's so much of it, but I absolutely love Jungle. So if I was going to trade into one of those early boxes, honestly, the original Evolving Skies, the OG Eevee set, this is the original Evolving Skies, folks. This one right here. And that's where I put my OG money. So I'm not mad at the trade. I'm happy about it, but it is a bit bittersweet that now that Urza's box is no longer there, sitting there looking over me.
I can't even find. I'm looking on eBay. I can't even find an unlimited 9. There's first edition. Oh, here we go. 230. It's like the cost of the pack. That's not
Yeah,
bad.
so if I broke the box, I could do a box break and charge $225 for the unweighed packs with shipping, with fees, with everything included, and offer if you hit a hollow to grade that with PSA for free. And I could still make like over $8,000, 8,100 and something dollars, just charging 225, which is very fair in my opinion, price for like an all-in box break kind of thing. So I may end up breaking that box because I don't think I could sell it for like 8,000 if I wanted to, and I think it'd be
Maybe
really fun.
Dan might buy it.
I mean,
We'll,
maybe at
we'll
that.
have to scrub out the part where you say what you got it for value wise, and so you can tax him. But
It's
yeah,
right there. Like 8 grand is right there. What I traded for it value wise. Like that's what I was asking on my Urza's box. But they're actually there's one online for like 7,300, 7,300. But it's all ripped up and it doesn't have like for the provenance that you would get from buying it from someone who knew. So like I think my price was really right on for a box like that, and so is that Jungle box. It was a very good. This is the kind of thing I love talking about after the fact because it really does. It was like a win-win situation for both me and him. Because while I do believe that the box that I traded him was a little bit more cool and rare, and I haven't seen as many of them around, like I've seen a million jungle boxes around. It just made sense because he's a magic dude. He had literally in his case at his booth, he had in CollectCon they have 10 tables. He had 5 of one of those 10s just of magic stuff. And in one section, one whole table, he had every single magic pack from the revised edition, which is like the third set ever made, onward. And he was only missing 3 booster pack slots in that entire case. And one of those slots was Urza's Saga because it's the best set ever made, the one that I have up there. And so, like, when he was looking at my box and I was telling him it was like legit, I got it out of the case, he was just looking at it as a way to break down into pieces and sell per pack because he had already sold through all of his. So he knew liquidity wise, he could sell that per pack. So he wasn't looking at like I was like it's this cool rare piece to have on a shelf. Like I'm looking at it now. He looked at it just like this jungle box right here, like I look at it. Because I don't look at this jungle box like, oh, it's a cool rare piece, like an investment piece or something. To me, that's $200 plus a pack that I can break down and sell if I don't just sell it as a whole all at once. It's also valuable as a whole for the right buyer. But I know that we're a hobby full of broke boys, and there ain't someone with one $8,000 purchase that's going to happen. More likely, a bunch of $200 purchases, is more likely, and that'll go in a matter of one stream, basically. So, for me, it was a win-win. We all win about it. He's not a Pokemon guy, so he's not going to break a jungle box. So it worked out.
Pop back on whatnot, baby. Get that. Nah. Like honestly, like for one box, you could probably sell it just through Instagram or
Yeah.
YouTube or something like that, just for 36 pack. Like you could probably get that worked out if you wanted to.
I could even break it at a Collecticon and just like sell it, have it
At
sitting
trade
there.
night, dog, when everybody's like 3 drinks deep or something, and you just pull
Yo,
that out,
let's
and you're
break
like,
this
"Who wants to
jungle
buy
box.
in?"
$200 a pack. Let's go right now.
Yeah,
And
100. That would be sold out in seconds. All the whales just phone. It's crazy, man. There's so many
yeah,
degens at those trade nights. I'm just like, man, y'all love gambling. Like
Yeah.
it's
So
God
that
bless you,
that
I
thing will be
guess.
gone at the next Galacticon if it goes to, basically, because it will, like you said, it'll just get bought and broken because it's like $200 is like nothing. That's nothing for a degen at Galacticon, you know. And to get a
Just
potentially
get
an
up,
you
just get
know, a
rock.
Snorlax, unlimited Snorlax Hollow with 36 in the population report, get out of here.
You just need to whisper sweet nothings into Rock Pokemon's ear. That man loves ripping expensive packs, dog. One of these days, though, he's gonna hit like a crazy banger. It's gonna grade a 10, and it's all gonna be worth it. Shout out to Rock Pokemon. He just dropped a video. If you guys aren't following him, he just dropped a video and hasn't posted anything in a minute. So
One of
go
the
check that
few
out.
ex co-hosts, if you will, of the podcast
Yeah,
that we
that's right.
have.
That's
He was one
right.
of our guest co-hosts.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we've been talking for 45 minutes. We gotta get into it. We gotta get into it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, we had a lot to say. It's been a while, and it's a lot of interesting stuff, honestly. I mean, Collecticon, we had Hawaii, we had, like, all these other little tangents we always go on. But yeah, we're probably right. We probably should go to Crossfire.
All
Okay.
right, do you want me to start or you want to start?
I want you to start because yeah, I have a couple different crossfires for you depending on how yours is and
Okay.
how
Well,
difficult, you know.
mine for once is not existential. It's not deep. It's not, it's chilling. I thought this would be good. Like at some other time, maybe on a live stream or so we could talk about like various stories that made me think about this. But you live in NorCal, so this I feel like will hit a little bit close to home, and you can kind of answer this, I guess, however you feel you want. But especially over the past maybe 5 to 10 years, what is your opinion on has tipping culture gotten out of control?
As far as like tipping culture is concerned, you have to understand I come from a background of heavy service and hospitality industry. So I, of course, have a big bias towards this. So I want to preface this whole conversation with, like, I worked on the front lines for 10 plus years before Pokemon in service to hospitality. And
But
so,
real quick caveat: you were taking people on tours,
yeah.
you were schmoozing, you were doing
I
quite a
wasn't
bit.
reliant on tip culture. No, I got a salary, I got medical insurance, I got benefits and all that stuff. Unlike normal servers, which are like minimum wage or the minimum, and they rely on tips. But I also got tips as well because I would do extra. I would go above and beyond, and people would see that and want to give me something for doing that, even though it was my job. It's like still, and so my bias isn't going to be in the way that I ever lived off that, but it is that I understand because I had a lot of friends in the restaurant industry and everything who did. So I also, when I was much younger, before I was in that salaried position doing tours and working for an actual company in a winery, I worked for like pizza joints, and I did work for an Italian restaurant, and I did work for a small amount of time, surviving mainly off of tips. I'd get minimum wage, and the tips would be what I'd have to survive on. And you can't survive in California on like $8 an hour minimum wage. So it was, and that was like when I was 19 or 18, 20. I was still going to community college at that time. Like, I was younger, but I needed to live. I needed to pay my bills. So yeah, I don't know what like it is now, like out of how it's gotten out of control as much, because like from where I see it, it's always been expensive out here, and 18% on tipping is standard. That's like the low percent. Like 20% is more likely what I'm gonna drop when I round up, typically speaking, and it goes higher to the 20% range. I don't eat out a lot though, sitting down like that. And when I order takeout, I don't tip on takeout. And I will say that getting takeout has oftentimes taken up my eating out at the restaurant. I don't eat out like that anymore, really. So I don't end up tipping so much because I'm getting more takeout when we do decide to splurge and kind of eat at home and do not, if we don't want to cook, we'll just order takeout, eat it at the house. And that's like the way we'll kind of, we'll splurge like we used to go out to eat. So I don't think, to me, I feel it so much because of that. But I don't know. Is that something like, do you feel like it's gotten out of control where you're from? Is that what I'm
I,
hearing from sort of
I
like,
think what I was more well because what I was saying with like when you worked at the winery and stuff, like again, you were like going above and beyond, like you were taking people on tours, you were doing something. I was more so asking the like, you pull up somewhere, you're like, yo, can I get like a bottle of water? And they're like, sure. They turn around, grab it out of the fridge, put it on the counter, spin the iPad around, and they're like, yeah, do you want to tip 20%? Like that's more so what I was like getting at.
I don't see a problem with that. I don't personally see a problem with that. I personally, as a person, as like a consumer, have no problem just saying no to that when in signing and saying no tip, because to me it didn't do anything that was necessary. Like, I also understand where like different personality types might view that as being pushy, and they feel awkward saying no tip because they think like, if I say no, then they turns around this person thinking like, ugh, what a cheap ass, and like things like. But I don't think that people think that way because I've been on the other side of that, like with the tip line underneath it. Because at the winery, for the longest time, like when I first started working there wasn't a tip line at the bottom of the receipt because the winery didn't want to feel pushy towards like, because they paid us like what at the time I got like $15 an hour starting like 10 years ago, and at the time that was good. That was above like high, way above minimum wage, and so they didn't want to put a tip line because they felt like it would be pushy, but they encouraged, like the verbiage of the hosts would encourage that if you felt like your server did well, to tip in cash. And so like I always felt like that didn't it led to less tips for the servers, and it was disingenuous to the guests and the servers, because if the server is doing a really good job, allowing the customer to express that is not being pushy in the least. It's just giving them the ability. Whereas if you just don't allow it at all, you're just cutting off that sort of mentality, and you're just not allowing it and setting the expectation. So it's both disingenuous for the person who wants to give more because you're like, oh, well, there's no way to do it, so I'm not. It's not really appreciated. And then on the other hand, the person who's serving then is like, well, I don't want to say something because like then it feels pushy if it's not there. So personally, I think just having the ability to tip on things that it's not expected but you maybe would want it is fine, and I don't think that's pushy in any way. It's spoiler alert, eventually like 2 or 3 years down the road, the servers fought hard enough and we got a tip line and everyone was much happier in the tasting room, and the guests were happier, and not everyone tipped. It wasn't like every person who came in and bought a bottle they left $5 tip or whatever. But like, listen, there would be times when someone would come into the winery. It would be a group. There'd be like no one there. There'd be like three of us working, right? And there'd be a patio with 5 seats, and every one of us would have an individual guest. And we were only appointment only. So we knew the next 3 hours, no one else was going to be there. If I wanted to, I could take you and your family and say, you know what, let's get out of this tasting room. Let's go to the barrel room and let's go take a walk into the winery. And I would often do that with guests who I thought were cool. I'd spend extra time, say, hey, let's go taste out of the barrel for next year, and we'll taste next year's wine. I get like this thing, and the winemaker would set up little. I would literally, before my shift and before the people would come in, set up these booths so that if I wanted to, I could do this. You better believe that not everyone gets that, and if you're an asshole to me, I'm just not even gonna blink. You're not gonna know that there's this barrel experience or whatever. It doesn't mean that I think you're a big baller, that you're gonna spend a bunch of money. If I do think you're a big baller and you're going to spend a bunch money, you better believe I'm probably going to take you back and do that. But that's what I mean. When you do that for your guests, would you not think that like a tip would be probably not expected, but it's like, if you don't, it's kind of like, that's a little bit kind of messed up, like not to
Yeah,
leave
no,
enough
no, no.
but
I agree 100%. Like I love, like I would say that recreationally, like I don't gamble. I'm not trying to go to a theme park and ride roller coasters. I'm not trying to go skydiving. Like where I like to spend recreational money is fine dining. Like that's what I love that experience. And it is an experience. Not only is it like, the art that the chef is putting forward, but it's also like, the experience. And like I'm not super needy. Like I don't send stuff back, and I probably should sometimes, but
I
like
think you should.
I have
I
a tough
personally
time.
think
Like I can't do it. Like I'm anyway. So I'm totally for tipping. I like to think I tip pretty well, especially if I'm going out to like a nicer restaurant and things like that. But maybe like sometimes I do feel guilty if I'm like I said, just getting like a bottle of water and someone just puts it on the counter and then spins it around, and I'm like, ooh, and the bottle of water is already like $10, and I'm like 20% on top of that, like, you know what I'm saying, like that. But so I don't know, like I'm sure people have strong and opinions both ways, but like even in Hawaii, like all of our tour guides, like I tipped all of our tour guides, like they're salaried employees, but I'm like, yo, like y'all took us to like these secret trails and waterfalls and stuff, like, I'm hooking it up, right? And
yeah.
I prefer to tip directly to the person in cash, because I know a lot of restaurants sometimes have like profit sharing things, which I understand the reasoning for it. But me personally, like if I'm being waited on by like one person specifically, or like one person specifically is providing the service, I personally believe that they deserve that money. Like that's just, maybe that's wrong. Maybe people in the restaurant industry can roast me in the comments, but that's just personally how I like to do it. Like I like to give the money directly to the person that provided the service. So
Yeah,
yeah,
when it felt different at the winery than it did at the pizza place that I delivered for, because at the winery, like we were saying, I was paid a better salary. It wasn't expected. These are all like luxury things. I also wasn't expected to go above and beyond. I mean, I was and I wasn't. Like they didn't expect me to take every group and walk them back to the back and do that experience I was talking about. In fact, if I did that to every group, it would look bad on me, because that shows I have no judgment. I have no ability to like discern, and like I'm just, it's everything that comes in, I'm throwing the whole wall at, which is not what you're supposed to do. Like,
well, and that's part of being a good server
yeah,
or a host or whatever you want to call yourself too, is understanding. Some people just want to be like left alone and have a
yeah,
relaxing experience. Some people do want to have a social experience. So you being able to gauge like these are the kind of people I can tell by, their vibe. They are, chatty. We're having a good conversation. Yeah, let's take them back. But then if you pull up to a table and you're like, oh, these people are just trying to chill and relax, you understanding that that's just you being a good host, right? So
yeah,
that
it's
is
about
where the
reading
tip is
people.
coming,
It's
right?
all about reading people and reading your customers. Whether you're selling them a bottle of fancy $100 wine, which is what I used to sell, or a piece of cardboard encased in plastic for thousands of dollars. It's all about just gauging your customer and knowing when to push and when not to, when to like sit back and wait, right? So
That'd be a good invest flip skip: wine, cheese, or slabs, or something like that. What
yeah,
wine?
I wanted to learn the whole cheesemongering trade when I was there, because I helped my winery develop the food and wine pairing program that they still run with, and there's no one else there who understood anything about like tasting or like pairing foods, because they just didn't care about food really, and I'm a big foodie. So I really developed that from the ground up, and that meant I got to, on the dime of the company, go to a whole bunch of cheese tastings from local cheese places and get demos, and go to the grocery stores to go buy this store every month. We'd go buy the different cheeses, so I'd taste all the different ones, and I'd get paid by the hour to sit there and just chat with the cheesemonger about what was new. And I would definitely milk it. I would milk the clock on that. I would
That's
go,
so funny that it's cheesemonger. Sounds like something you call somebody on the internet. Like,
it's a
you know what
real
I'm saying?
thing, and it's a sign of respect. Like I know three cheesemongers by name. One of them shares my name, Josh, and he's also a long red-haired guy. And it's so funny because like I was like, dude, what are the odds? Like that your name is Josh, my name. We both have long red hair. We both love cheese. Like I was like gonna try to be a cheesemonger at that, because the company was gonna pay for me to do a class up in Oregon to do like a once per year cheese test that you could get certified, that I could then call myself a cheese like master, and
I'm
then
gonna start calling you a cheesemonger when you get out of line.
I
I'm
know
like,
more about
Rossi
fancy
cheesemonger.
cheeses than many people, and probably than most people even in the industry of cheese, because of like the nature of, I used to buy for my company. So I would buy for years, I would develop the cheese and the wine pairings at the winery. So I had to stay up. And cheese doesn't move very fast. Like the world of cheese, a new cheese wins like every 10 years. It's like the same cheeses win every year at the World Cheese Fair, and then a new company makes a new cheese, and all it is just like a cow from a pasture 2 miles down the road, and then that's the big innovation. So like cheese industry doesn't change much. So
Well, the cheese is like such a science. It's I for all you out there that are like, why are these guys talking about cheese? Look, maybe you're not a foodie, but like there's levels to cheese. Okay.
yeah.
If you're buying store-bought slices, this is not for you right now. Okay. Like
Well,
we're
that's cheese too. I hate the slander that's put onto American cheese, and I will to the day I die, I will be one of the few big cheese heads who really defends American cheese.
okay, but isn't it funny though that the cheese called American cheese is fake cheese? Like
It's
that's
not
kind of
fake
fun.
cheese, it's processed cheese, first of all. It's still real cheese.
Heavily processed, but
Basically, what it is like cheese that's like chopped up and like processed and then
it's
made
like the
into this.
tilapia of cheeses.
I mean, kind of. It's more like it's made in such a way that it's more perishable, or it's less perishable, and it's basically easier to use, and like it melts more. It's not really, they don't put like,
It does melt. Like I mean, you're a
it's
kid,
still
you're eating
cheese,
like
bro. Even though it's cheese
yeah,
food and it's not allowed to be called, it's not the same. It's not like the artisan level that is like Parmesan Reggiano, or like something
a
made in the
good
America region
Roquefort.
of
Ooh,
Spain or whatever, like Gouda. It's not some historic, but it has its time and place. And honestly, I think it's a very, very respectable cheese for what it
that's
is.
fair. I mean, you're also the Velveeta and Rotel guys, so I mean, I can respect it. I'm not mad at you. If you ever come, like if they do a collecticon out here and you come out to Seattle, I'm taking you to this place called Beecher's in Pike Place. I mean, they have like their mac and cheese
I
in
know Beechers. I've had many of their cheddars before. I
okay,
know them.
okay, yeah, dude. Beecher's slaps. Like you go to the Beecher's in Pike Place and get like their grilled cheese fresh or their mac and cheese fresh. Oh my god, dog! Like, whoo, it's just they even have it
Our
in the
Beechers is
airport.
Cowgirl Creamery. Cowgirl Creamery up here in Northern California is like
Okay,
Beechers
okay.
for you. It's like it's in the Bay Area. It's like a local creamery that does like local cheese making. They're famous. They're really good with it. They win awards all the time. They're very good. I like French cheeses. Personally, French and Swiss cheeses are like the absolute best cheeses in the world. So, there are other cheeses that are good, obviously. I like local cheeses, but
Do you like Roquefort?
I mean, it's good. I don't love those soft ripened or
Blue
even blue
cheeses.
cheeses.
Yeah.
I'm more of the hard aged, like really matured cheeses that
Like it'll
aren't as
break your tooth
sticky.
if you bite it, kind of
I,
cheese.
I like, yeah, I like that
Yeah.
crystallization that occurs. Like my fiance loves the soft, stinky cheeses, the wash rind cheeses and
When you
things.
taste the crystals, dog, like when you eat a nice piece of aged cheese and you taste oh my god, dog, like
Okay, last thing about cheese. Last thing about cheese, and we move on. But if you ever go to Whole Foods, if you ever go to any of those big like retailers, and you see them cracking open a wheel of Parmesan, a fresh wheel. I don't mean something that's already been cut and wrapped in Saran wrap. I mean, if you ever, I'm talking to you listening, see, no matter where you are, at a farmer's market, a Whole Foods, them crack a fresh Parmesan wheel, just normal Parmesan wheel, you need to stop what you're doing. Put down the phone call, stop the Clash of Clans, stop whatever scrolling on TikTok you're doing, or swiping, whatever, and wait by that cheese counter and ask the cheesemonger if you can taste a fresh piece of the Parmesan from the freshly broken wheel. Because here's the thing about wheels of cheese, like Parmesan. It's a living organism. It is a living thing until you crack the wheel and break the seal. Once you break it and cut that wheel up, it starts oxidizing and the cheese literally dies. You will never taste anything quite so delicious as a freshly 24 or more month aged Parmesan wheel being broken and tasting a fresh cheese right off of the broken wheel. You won't know what hits you because it doesn't taste like Parmesan cheese, because every Parmesan you've ever had before that has been wrapped and put onto a shelf, because after 2 hours of time, once you break the wheel, the cheese and the texture changes and you can't replicate that flavor or umami of flavor. So just as a foodie, if you don't know what like good flavor is, if you're ever shopping, it's not gonna happen. You can't go to your Whole Foods and see this happen. You have to be right place, right time. I've only had this happen to me about 3 or 4 times in my life, where I've been fortunate enough to see the wheel getting broken while I was at the store, and I sat around for about 10 minutes one time as they're breaking it down, because it takes them time. These things are massive, these big wheels. You have to give them time to break it down. Don't just be like, hey, because they're busy. I stayed and waited for like 10 minutes just to get a taste of this thing. And I promise you, it's worth every second of that queue that you sit there and put yourself through. I sat in like Disney World and Disney lines for like longer than that and been less satisfied. So please, if you ever see that, if you're listening, try a fresh Parmesan when it's been broken, because it will change your life.
Okay, really quick, last thing before we get into your crossfire. Did you watch Pokemon Horizons on Netflix yet? The new
No,
show that just came out? Okay,
no.
so real quick, spoiler, if you're listening to this, haven't seen it and care, skip 3 minutes into the future, 2 minutes, whatever. It's a little bit kiddie. I mean, it's targeted to 12-year-olds, right? 8 to 12-year-olds probably. But I will say there's this one scene. I almost don't even want to spoil it for you. If are you gonna watch it, or do you not really care?
I
Okay,
never watched the new Pokemon cartoons, unfortunately.
it's whatever. But I thought I would try because I was like, whatever. I haven't watched Pokemon anime in a long time. So there's this one scene, and like there's this whole thing with like ancient dibbity doodah. What? Anyways, this dude has shiny Rayquaza, dog. Like it comes out of nowhere because it's just a bunch of like QT. There's a lot of like Paldean Pokemon, and this kid finds this like Master Ball. Like his grandpa, he lives on this island, and this kid like has this ball, it's like some weird ancient looking Master Ball type deal, and like he doesn't even know anything's in it. He doesn't know how to open it, whatever. And they're in a fight, and shiny Rayquaza pops out, dog. Not even just regular Rayquaza, shiny Rayquaza. And I'm just like, yo, like that hit for, again, like shows like, whatever. I maybe give it like a 7 out of 10. I'm a little too old to it's for 8 to 12-year-olds, but like shiny Rayquaza busting out of the ancient Master Ball, I was like kind of intrigued here. Like, I'm here for a shiny Rayquaza. So, but the thing that got to me, in the show, all the characters are calling it Rayquaza, and I'm like, dog, I don't care if Rayquaza is the official pronunciation from Pokemon. I'm never in my life calling Rayquaza Rayquaza. Like, it sounds stupid. It's not phonetically correct when you look at how it's spelled. Forever Rayquaza. I'm sorry. End of rant. We can get into your crossfire, but
Rayquaza. What is it? I
Rayquaza
don't know.
just sounds so stupid. It's Rayquaza, dog. Like it's got to be Rayquaza. I don't. It rolls off better. Like I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can't do it. I was so disappointed when I heard them say that. But anyway.
Okay, so I just wanted to, so with my crossfire, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions here. First of all, just a second. If I recall, in last week's podcast, you had said you typically would go the road less traveled. Is that correct? You would take the more difficult path traveled. Is that correct, Mr. Specs?
Oh wait, this is about the tough men make good times thing or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
we're referring to. You said in life you would typically take the more difficult path rather than the easier path. Am I correct in assuming that, Mister?
That's correct, officer.
That's good. That's good. Now, let the record hold. Let the record hold that Mr. Giovanni, Mr. Retrospecs, as he has been known in previous incarnations of this podcast, he has said that he would take the more difficult, not the easier path traveled. Right. Oh, okay. Now, just to set the record straight, I would like to get that out of the way before we get into this crossfire. Now, Mr. Giovanni, you have two questions. I have two questions. You have two choices to make. You may make this easy choice in life, and you may approach the bench, and you may tell the guests of the podcast whom your favorite Pokemon to impersonate might be. And you may then make that Pokemon's impersonation. Yes, that is now the easy path to take, because I do believe it is in the best nature and the best interest of this court to hear that Pokemon come out of your lips. That Pokemon's name come out of your lips.
Oh man. Okay, so
now the second now
okay.
Before you make any choices here, Mr. Specs, no, don't go getting ahead of yourself now. We still have the second, the more difficult travel, because I will also call to the attention of the court. There is one podcast where you foully did not allow for, now, what was this? It was a said Godzilla and King Kong impersonation that was supposed to have been had. That was taken from the court brutally and unfairly. Now, I will just add, there is a recompense that you can take to then rectify this said offense, and it would only be in such a way. Now that King Kong and Mr. Godzilla, as it were, are now coming to fruition, you may then regale the court in what it was again, the sound that Godzilla might make if he were to potentially go up in arms against Mr. Kong, sir. So now I would like to also call to the attention of the court. You did say last podcast that you would take the road less traveled. So I will leave it in your very faithful.
All right. All right. I hope Swami is not watching this deep, because he's about to tear me up. I have been known in various Discord calls, Discord groups, things of that nature, to what I like to think be fairly good at doing voices, and you know, some might even call me a funny guy, but you know, I haven't really shown a lot of that on YouTube. All right, so my girlfriend, we watched a little bit of the original Pokemon anime, and she likes a lot of the cute Pokemon and stuff like that. She hates Mr. Mime. She's creeped out by him. She does not like Mr. Mime. So every once in a while, I'll do Mr. Mime's voice to piss her off.
Let's go. Let's hear it.
All right. Mr. Mime!
Damn. Is Mimey around? Should we call Ash's mom?
Is that pretty good? I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty good Mr. Mime. He's like, Mr. Mime! And then I don't. The other ones are kind of regular, honestly, like Charmander, Char, and I don't know. I'd have to like work on like.
You know who my favorite is? You know who my favorite typically is?
Who? What is that, like Pidgeotto or something? Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. I'm trying to think of another one. Oh, well, I mean, like Pikachu or something like that, like just Pikachu, or like I want to be able to do the little like dreet thing noise that Togepi does or whatever. That would be super. But like that, oh, man. All right, the Mr. Mime is. I'll have to sprinkle in some voices throughout the future podcast. I'm trying to think like what other Pokemon say.
Oh, dude, they just say their names. They literally just say their names.
I'm trying to think of like what.
Some of them say them in such funny ways. Like I always just died. Like I would do that to Sarah, to really like when we were watching the Pokemon series in COVID or whatever. That was the one that I would just do out of nowhere. That would just fucking scare the shit out of her. Obviously, because
that was amazing. That was majestic almost. Like I would call that majestic. Like that yeah, bro. Like you might have some Native American in your blood or something. That was like a war cry. That was beautiful for sure.
oh my
I can't go
god.
quite that far, but I like to think I do a pretty good Mr. Mime for sure, which
Yeah,
is
no, that's solid. No, I knew
that's
you'd have some good ones under your belt. I
that's
thought I'd give Swami some good
I
fodder.
hate to say it, but I was best at impersonating PokeTubers. I feel like that's what I usually had you guys laughing in Discord was me like doing or like PokeTubers talking to each other. Like I remember one time I did like Z and Cam talking to each other or something like that.
Oh
So
my
I'm pretty I was gonna make a video out of it, but then I thought people might get their feelings hurt over it, and I was like, that's not the point of it. Like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or make fun of you or whatever. I'm just like, just clowning around. But
yeah.
uh, yeah,
Okay. All right. That was good crossfire. Then I guess we can forgive you for the Godzilla sound. Then now,
uh,
since we got a good one, a good Pokemon out of
yeah.
you, Atticus Finch will let you go on that one.
Atticus, damn, that's a cut. Okay, all right.
All right, so we'll go on to our main topic here. It only took us an hour and 15 minutes to get into this, but this is a
I
juicer.
know.
This is actually one. It's not clickbait. The actual title, even though we were talking about Hawaii and cheese and all the other stuff, but um, TikTok just recently, as of about I think it's as of March 13th or March 14th, the House passed legislation that could ban TikTok in the US unless the app parts ways with its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. It's a major challenge to one of the world's most popular social media platforms used by 170 million Americans. Now, I'm reading this from the CNN website, just kind of covering what the bill was enacting or whatever it was going through. So it says if the bill is enacted or passed on a which it passed in the House on a bipartisan vote of 352 to 65. So it passed very, very, I mean, with more than enough votes here. It doesn't seem like it's slowing down. It would give TikTok about 5 months to separate from ByteDance, or app stores in the US would be banned from hosting it on their platforms. It's not yet clear what the fate of the measure will be in the Senate, because now it has to move from the House and then go to the Senate. And President Biden, has already said that if it gets to his desk, he will sign it. He is not going to veto it. He said he will sign it. And so, lawmakers,
Joey
uh,
B, President Joey B.
it's going to be probably highly politicized. I hate to say it in the coming race because the two factions, as it were, are having differing opinions on it. The Republicans, who were formerly very much so against TikTok, are now rallying, sort of potential, are unwilling to say they're against it, and are potentially going to, it looks like, maybe use it as a bargaining piece to kind of get that youth vote, that TikTok vote, to come out to the polls. Because like
That's interesting.
if the
Yeah.
Democrats have already said, like the President Joe Biden's already said that he's going to say, I'll sign it and not veto it, then that means if you put yourself on the other side of it, which is a very unpopular opinion among the youth, you could potentially be this like so I do believe that this is going to lead into potentially politicizing the whole thing, just
Well,
like things
the
always do.
vote though, like in the Senate, the vote was pretty bipartisan though. Like it wasn't
Yes.
heavy one way or the other.
No,
But
at this
I
point,
see
it's
what you're
not a
saying.
Democrat Republican thing. They are very, very much so. All of the House seems to be, except for the 68 that voted against it, they seem to be pretty much unanimously against TikTok. And that has been a sentiment that I think has been held by the older generation, which is in no small part what is making up the overall government officials, the older folks. You're not seeing like teenagers in Congress. But you know that the older folks have always held this sort of anti-TikTok sentiment. It feels like, I don't want to say that all older folks are against TikTok, because that's sort of ageist and not really representative of everyone, but it's true that I think the boomer generation has generally been less receptive to it. And I hear the sentiment most of the time from people who are a little older saying, I don't do the whole TikTok thing. Just against it because it's a Chinese company in general. And that's what the bill is sort of focusing on. It's saying that TikTok needs to go private rather than being owned by a Chinese company so that it can then protect its users' rights and user information. The company, of course, has since outwardly said that it doesn't use that information, that the Chinese aren't using it in their government, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But you really can't believe what the Chinese government says, I hate to say, and that's not a political statement at all, unfortunately.
This one's getting crazy. This might
But
be
when
the
it comes
first. If this gets 100 views, we know why. It's because YouTube just tanked us on this one. But
it's very. I think it's going to be something that everyone's talking about right now, though. So I don't think it's gonna.
yeah, yeah, no,
It's one of those things. It's very much so relevant, and it's if it goes to the Senate, and if it doesn't get delayed and delayed, and then made into some big political thing, and then politicized into the Republicans versus Democrats. If it's an actual issue that gets the light of day that it probably should, I'm very concerned with the platform if it doesn't privatize because it doesn't look like these old boomers are going to change their opinion unless their party makes them. You know what I mean? And at this point, it looks like they're very together on this whole thing. They unanimously don't like information being sold and given to external governments on a vast majority of their user base. They don't like that. And that's what they're trying to get to the root of, I believe. So it's
yeah,
interesting. There's a lot, it pertains to Pokemon because there's a lot of business that is done on Pokemon. A ton of new rip and ships, a ton of new businesses, and a lot of new hell, I think I attribute the falling of the modern sealed market, a lot of it to do with like these TikTok deals that were offered since basically last year around November. It's been full deals, 100%, in-person stores cannot compete with what these TikTok shops are offering. It's just been doing work on the market. And so it just puts an interesting pressure, I would say, on the market. And I do think that if I were a business who is doing primarily a large amount of my business on TikTok, I don't know if I'd be like panicking per se, but I might be a little concerned and I would be following into this. But have you heard about all this? Is this something that's been on your radar or anything?
yeah. I mean, it really started popping off like while I was in Hawaii. Um, what what should I say? I I understand the sentiment behind the reasoning for it from like a finance point of view as far as them separating it. I mean, it's tough, right? Because when you look at China, right? Just, I mean, emerging markets in general, but like definitely China. Like China has severely underperformed. Like FXI, which is like a large cap ETF for Chinese companies, basically. I want to say FXI is down like 46% over the past 5 years, down 46%. Meanwhile, like the S&P has just been absolutely ripping. So like you adjust that for inflation. If you were investing in emerging markets, like you've been wrecked over the past 5 years, and China especially, which a lot of people thought would perform, right? Like with globalization and offshoring and things like that. So I don't know what percentage of China's GDP or how much money TikTok makes for China in tax revenue and things like that. But with the way that the Chinese government has treated other businesses like Alibaba that have gotten like very very large, and the sort of way that they've been controlling towards those businesses, I find it hard to believe that they're going to let TikTok separate from ByteDance if they have anything to say about it. I think financially it would be the best move for them to separate and have some sort of, at the very least, a subsidiary in the United States, because TikTok is probably the quickest growing quickest adoption rate of any social media app In fact, I know it's the most the craziest adoption rate of any social media app in history. So it's tough to say what's going to happen there. I do agree with you that it'll probably get politicized in the upcoming election, which is just like, whatever. But as far as the Pokemon sales stuff goes, I actually might tend to agree with you on. I do think there's a lot of supply of modern sealed in all languages out there circulating right now. But I do agree that them subsidizing the sales on those booster boxes, ETBs, all that, price memory is real, right? And when people get used to like, yo, I can hop on TikTok and every week there's a new coupon for me to get ETBs for $20, people are not going to go back to like, oh, well, I'm going to pay $60 or $80 for a Pokemon Center exclusive ETB because I can just go on TikTok and buy one for $20. I can go and buy a V-Star Universe box for $40 or $30 or whatever they got down to with the crazy coupons, right? And so I actually tend to agree with you that that's sort of like price, and everybody was talking about it, right? Like not even investors or flippers, but just people in general were talking about those TikTok deals because it was like, yo, I can hop on an app that a lot of people were already using and buy Pokemon for the dirt. And the sellers didn't really have any downside from it because TikTok was subsidizing it so heavily. So it's tough to say like what sort of impact that it'll have on the market. But if your like entire business model is, reliant on TikTok, I definitely would be pretty worried right now. Like it's putting all your eggs in one basket is definitely risky, especially when you've got this sort of like geopolitical risk with it being a Chinese company and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't, and maybe this will kind of like bleed a little bit into our next topic, but I don't know what's going to happen to the market if TikTok shut down. I also don't know like what percentage of product out there circulating was bought or broken. Sorry, on TikTok. So it's tough to say what sort of effect that'll have on the market. But I would think if people did get banned and people's businesses were primarily reliant on TikTok and somebody like a breaker is sitting on a ton of product and TikTok's banned, they might be like dumping that product. How much is that going to affect the market? I don't know, but that it's definitely a consideration for sure to think about. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think I don't use TikTok anymore. I had a lot of issues with their customer service when I did run into problems selling through them, and it was just very unresponsive and not helpful. And it led me to have little to no confidence in their company when it came to dealing with problems that may have been a little bit more extensive. So I didn't feel comfortable scaling my business more onto TikTok when my cautionary, like my first experience was somewhat bad, I guess you would say, and it didn't lead me to want to like put more into that bucket. So I withdrew everything from TikTok very. I think it was like 2 months ago. I took everything off of my TikTok after I finally finalized all my situation and like, it was just, they don't really seem like they have a good handle on what's happening. They're just kind of trying to do too much. And it doesn't feel like they're based enough in the US so that when I was dealing with the customer service, it very much so felt like there were miscommunications, language barriers. It felt like I was dealing with someone who did not understand what I was going through or couldn't even really communicate in such a way that I needed. And there was no way to communicate via any other way other than their live chat system, which I found to be very, very archaic and like sort of juvenile, like when you have to use a live chat to deal with like hundreds of dollars worth of orders that are, and then having to like reconnect and stuff. So it was just not streamlined to the point of my liking. So I stopped using TikTok, and I have not publicly like advocated against it, but I certainly haven't been an advocate for it, that's for sure. So I don't think that TikTok getting banned would be bad for the market. I think the opposite. I think it might actually be good because what they were doing was good short term, but bad long term, in my opinion, because of what you said with price memory and consumers not understanding that the deals that were being offered weren't being offered by the actual sellers, they were being subsidized, and then expecting those deals to be like matched in person or they just buy it online. So, like, I personally think if this TikTok disappeared, it wouldn't be a bad thing. It might be a hot take. Like, I know that a lot of people do a lot of business on TikTok because their fees are really low, but they just raised their fees to 8% from 5%. So, like, they're just going up and up anyway. So I don't see what you're paying for, you know. So I'm not a big advocate of TikTok. And I'm just not so sure I would even stand behind as a buyer being an advocate of it, because if you got resealed product, or if you got some bought from a seller that was maybe a little bit shadier and they were selling something that wasn't real, if you needed to get your money back, I don't feel confident that they would be able to do that on a regular basis or would be willing to. So yeah, I think there needs to be some sort of situation with TikTok.
I haven't tapped in with Pokemon Radar's content in a minute, but I would wonder if he's going to make anything related to TikTok, because I know he was uh, working for them, doing sort of handling the onboarding of all these Pokemon sellers. So I wonder what like his opinion on all that is. I've never been on TikTok in my life. Like it's one of those things that I understand it. I think it's a phenomenal marketing tool, but I think that it is. I don't know. I think a lot of social media in general is psychologically damaging, and doom scrolling and all that sort of stuff. And it's just not like, I try to have very little social media on my phone in general, but TikTok was just one of those ones that I was like, no, I can't do just the mindless short term content just over and over and over. And again, like, not trying to sound like a boomer, I think it's an amazing marketing. And in fact, I remember watching this like Gary V video where I can't remember what he called them, but like people would come in, different like business owners or consultants for business, and they would like kind of sit at this table and they'd go one by one and they would like ask him questions on how they could grow the business. And he would just constantly say like, TikTok is free advertising. I don't care what business you're in. If you're not utilizing TikTok, like, you are losing money. So I totally understand that TikTok is like the future. It's a way to get your brand out there, your name out there. You can go viral on TikTok a lot easier than you can go viral on like YouTube or something like that. So and a lot of these other social media platforms, like maybe Facebook, and I don't know, some people might even argue Instagram, are like getting a little bit antiquated, or at the very least just have a capture less of the younger demographic than TikTok. But it's just never been something that I've personally interacted with, just because I don't personally think it's like it's healthy. But I also don't think that that should be reasoning for it to be banned. But again, the reasoning seems to be because they're maybe like leaking people's data to foreign governments. So it's tough, man. But again, I think that this all will kind of like bleed into the next thing we want to talk about, just because what's happened with uh, the modern sealed market in general over the past year is, and again, like, things are still appreciating in the background for sure, but Pokemon has definitely, like, I would argue over the past 5 years, this year Pokemon has finally met supply with demand for sure. Like, I don't think anybody, maybe outside of like Japanese 151, but like English 151 is still available for people, right? Outside of maybe 151, I don't think that there's a single product that Pokemon has produced, whether that be a specialty product, a promo, anything. We've seen what's been happening with the Van Gogh this year specifically. I don't think there's a single product that Pokemon has underproduced, or that people that want it haven't had the opportunity to be able to get a hold of, which you could argue is good. But again, to like Rudy's whole like game pieces, thesis, like, things need to have value on the secondary market, right? And so I think that's why you get those like whispers about like the short print of temporal forces and things like Pokemon watches the market, and Pokemon also, or I would like to believe, like Pokemon watches sentiment. I mean, when you look at like earnings are a lagging indicator to sentiment, right? Like when you talk about companies, and so like a lot of hedge funds pay for sentiment research. They pay for companies that do sentiment analysis, that send out surveys to hundreds of thousands of people, different demographics, different consumer bases, things like that, to sort of have a prediction of where the market's headed. Like sales earnings, you get after the fact. Sentiment is before the fact. How are people feeling about spending their money right now? And so I kind of feel like I would hope again that Pokemon is like looking at sentiment, which might overall be even if I maybe disagree with it. Like I still think a lot of the Scarlet and Violet block is pretty strong and has really cool cards in it. But with just the amount of supply, the lack of urgency out there, I think that the general sentiment is like not as enthused maybe as people were during the Sword and Shield era. So maybe they're adjusting print runs. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Because again, things are still appreciating in the background, especially like a lot of the Sword and Shield sets, and I think even maybe some of the Scarlet and Violet stuff has moved up like $10 or $20. But yeah, long rant. What do you think? What do you think about this?
Well, with all that being said, do you in some way maybe impart some of that problem to online retailers for not being willing to hold the line on their price for their like bottom dollar that they'll take, and just continuously to dump and dump until what the market feels is right happens? Because I do feel like it's sort of one of those things in Pokemon that you don't see in other things like Magic the Gathering, or you don't see in some other like trading card games that you need more brick and mortar sort of um like more like official like it's like, so basically, if you have a business license, you can go get Pokemon distribution. You don't have to be like a game store. Whereas with other games like One Piece, Lorcana, like Magic, you have to jump through more hoops to actually go and get those boxes at distribution price. So you're probably going to be less willing to just drop them for nothing, basically for no, because the barrier to entry to get those is so much greater because you have overhead and all these things. Whereas with online retailers with Pokemon, it's much more lax or laissez-faire. If you get a distributor, if you can get one, which it is hard to get just in general getting in these days because they don't accept everyone. But assuming you get one, you don't need a brick and mortar. You don't need to have overhead. You could just be a guy in a closet like this guy who has distribution because you've had it for a long time and you sell online through your shop, you have a business license, you do all that extra stuff that you need to. But I don't pay like extra overhead for a shop. I don't have employees. And so I could theoretically sell for the exact cost that I get it for and not lose that much money. And so I don't do that because I still can't sell it at that price and make money because the price is lower than that. But that's what's happening with online retailers. It's what I've seen is I sent you the reason we have this whole topic is because I sent you a post just yesterday about a online retailer, the Safari Zone, who we all know, we all love in the hobby, however you want to feel about it. But there is a company out there. I'll call them a company. I think they're business or LLC or something, but they're an online retailer. I don't believe they have a brick and mortar store. And they just dump at the most ridiculous prices. They were selling cases of this newest set, Temporal Forces, for $520. $520 a case. That's 80 or 85 bucks a booster box. I get my booster boxes at a bare minimum for like $96 a box from distribution. And I recognize that that's higher than a lot of other people like because I'm a small fry. I don't buy a lot. My numbers aren't as large and I'm buying from a smaller distributor as well. And so like the costs are a little higher, but I certainly know that my competitors aren't getting their boxes for lower than $85. And if they are, that's insane because I know the MSRP went up. And so I personally can only see this happen for so long before my little brain starts to think like, what's going on here? Like, why and how is this happening regularly? How are these guys making money? How is this like, what is going on? So I am wondering if you know what the, like, are they just literally just buying on their 3% cash back? They're just putting it on their card and just
Yeah,
playing the smallest margins possible and out competing everyone in that margin and volume because they move cases. Because at this point, it's better for me to buy from them directly than to buy from my distributor, whom, you know what I mean? And so I don't
yeah.
get how they make any money doing that after shipping and everything.
So let's say they're buying the boxes for 85, which cheap, but Savari Zone has been around for a long time. So I imagine they have a decent deal and they probably do pretty good volume. So let's just say they're getting it for 85. The 530 per case worked
520.
out to like 80. What did you say?
It was 520 actually.
It's 520.
Yes.
Okay. So at buying at
Ship.
85, if
That's shipped price.
that's nuts. So if they're buying at 85, they're in at 510 a case. They're selling for 520, which what is that? 520 divided by 6, 86. So there's $1.67 per box priced in margin wise. And then if they're buying on 2% cash back, they're getting basically like $10 in credit card rewards. So their margin is effectively they have $20. So they have to be shipping under or right at $20 to break even, which and that's the break even with credit card rewards factored in. So that's rough. To your question about like, do I blame people for it? Like, I don't blame them for it because I understand like they have to make money, like they or well not make money, but they have to like turn their money over and they have to make sales. Like they can't just sit on dead product or whatever. They have to continually like turn it over. So I don't necessarily like blame people. I think more of what I would have more of an issue, and not even an issue with, but I think something that people could have more of an issue with is when LGSs or smaller businesses are being expected to take these massive allocations at a higher price point, and then these distributors are selling to the Amazons of the world and then fire sailing on Amazon because they have a sweetheart deal with the
Like with the Magic the
distributor.
Gathering, like what
Yeah,
we
and
saw with
with
the Magic.
Amazon,
Yeah.
that feels again like it's capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I'm not again, but like that feels a little like, you're kind of screwed because again, I'm not totally convinced that TCGs in general or sports cards could entirely survive off just big box stores. And with sports cards in general, we've talked about it before, but like companies do the best kind of product in sports can only be purchased through hobby stores. So that's kind of an incentive to drive people to the smaller businesses. But I don't blame people for it, but I also like I think it's your positioning, right? Like I look at like Dan is buying a ton, but he's not selling any of it. Like he's sitting on it because he's just like it doesn't make sense. And for Dan, like could he put his cash flow somewhere else and make more money than like sitting on booster boxes? Yeah, but he's also probably maxed out on his time, and so keeping his allocations high with his distributor, um, knowing that he has like a network of potential outlets that he could sell to, maybe make a buck a box, maybe break even. I just think it's less of an issue for him. And so he's able to sit on that product until it appreciates to a price that makes sense selling at. And then by doing that, when a good set like 151 drops or when a new One Piece set comes out, Dan's able to get like a good chunk of One Piece and then, sell it for the crazy prices that One Piece is selling for. So it's understanding that sort of like you got to like take it on the chin here so that you can make a little money here, but it's rough. And we've talked about this a few times. Like, how long can that last? Because maybe Safari Zone can afford to do that, but how many other online retailers can afford to do that? And so I would actually say if you're somebody that's interested in trying to get in with distribution, now is probably, I mean, it's going to hurt. You're not going to make money, and you're going to, like, you need to be ready to take a loss because you're going to get terrible pricing, and they're going to give you doo-doo product, and they're not going to give you a lot of it. But if getting distribution is something that you're interested in because of the current sort of like market climate, now is probably the best time for you to be like calling Southern Hobby, calling Mad Owl, calling GTS, and trying to get distribution, because I imagine a lot of people are over leveraged and falling off. They might, maybe they're not going bankrupt, but they're probably not placing orders anymore, and distributors might be kicking them out. But what do you think? Like, do you think it's like wrong? Do you think it's like bad? Obviously it's not great for the market, but like, what do you think about Safari Zone selling cases for 520? That's nuts. That's nuts.
It's
But
toxic as hell, bro. To use one of the more millennial terms of our time, it's toxic as all fuck, dude. Like, it's toxic for the consumer because the consumer thinks that that's normal or thinks that that's like okay or that's what their competitors should be selling for. And it's toxic for the sellers who are forced to sit there and watch it happen because they're just like sitting there scratching their freaking heads like, why? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what is going on for the smallest little bits of margin that have to be there? And maybe there's more worked in, or there's some sort of secret in the sauce, or maybe she just likes to tank the market and she gets off on that, and that's like how the Safari Zone operates. But I mean, I like to think that it's good for the consumer because it's the lowest prices possible. So it's the lowest you can get in on it. And so it's actually good to have that for the consumer. But when it sets a bad precedent and it like sets a weird expectation and it just consistently has me scratching my head, like, what are we doing? What's going on here? Like, it would be
well,
one if
and
everyone was making a bunch of money and they were selling for above, but then they were undercutting the market. If like, say for example, a new set came out and the boxers were like $155 and they were selling for like $145 or $139.99 or $115, they're undercutting by that much. That's one thing. But like when it's for less than the distribution costs and it's like so much, it's like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? And
well,
that's what
and to sort of side with you a little bit, at this last at the live show that I've ended on Saturday, there's these dudes that sort of have like a chokehold over the local Pokemon Market Facebook group in Washington, right? And they pre-sold on Facebook Temporal Forces booster boxes for $130, to where you would pre-buy them on Facebook, pull up to the card show, and pick them up in person. They sold out at $130, and I just went on Pokemon Center while we were talking. Every single Temporal Forces product is sold out, which is nuts. The ETBs, the friggin' booster bundles, the loose booster. I don't know what's making people go crazy because the sets, like, outside of the legendary dogs and maybe Gengars, and I don't know if it's in the English version, but like outside of
YouTubers
that,
are pumping it as being under printed or short printed when in reality it's just not popular. It's not as popular, and it maybe was a little bit
yeah,
under
like
printed, but
in Japanese, those boxes, even the one with the 3 legendary dogs and the Gengar in it, which is, it's kind of rough that they put the 3 legendary dogs and the Gengars in one set, and then the other set was like Virizion and Teraki. Like, I'm not trying to hate on Black and White, but like clearly the Wild Force was better than Cyber Judge. Anyways, these people are able to sell out of Temporal Force. It's sold out on the Pokemon Center. There is some FOMO right now, and it's
it's a
sold out
pump.
on Pokemon Center at $161 a box plus tax. So it is kind of nuts to me. When you sent me that link, I'm like, why? Like some random, I don't know how big they are, but like they're definitely not Safari Zone. These local dudes are able to sell out at 130. Pokemon Center is able to sell out at 161 plus tax. Why are y'all selling at $85, $86? Like, it doesn't make any. I mean, I'm not trying to tell them out, like, they're a way bigger business than me, but it does seem kind of nuts. It's like, for what? Like, maybe I should look on eBay and see what booster boxes are going for on eBay. But it's like with a really crappy set that no one wants, that there's tons sitting on Pokemon Center, it's readily available. Fine. But if some random local dudes are able to sell out of booster boxes of their allocation at 130 in Safari Zone, I don't know, man. Like it just, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me personally. But again, like they've been around for years, and maybe we're missing something. I don't know. I'm gonna check eBay really quick while you respond.
Yeah, and I think that the next topic we're going to go into is just about modern sets. I think this one kind of bleeds a little bit into that, so we can probably just go right into the invest, flip, skip as well once we look up those prices. But I do think that Pokemon needs to do a couple of things, or needs to do something to pick up the pace. I don't think that they need to make more mid sets that have the same sort of formulaic process that they've been doing. Give us a couple art rares that are kind of cool. Give us a couple of SARs that are kind of cool. Give us a gold card. Give some weird texture card that's like an ace spec, and then call it a day. They need to add that next level rarity, and I know they're making mega evolutions again, so maybe that's going to be the mega evolutions. They're going to be like the VMAX alternate arts, and they'll have a higher level of rarity, and we'll get our next Moonbreon, because it's going to be tough to keep on selling these sets that are like sub MSRP right before they come out. And I get it that like Pokemon does this and it happens. You look at the other eras and they did fine over time, and everyone's like, oh, just hold the line, hold the line. It's the same, but they do need to really make a good set soon, because 151 is great, but there wasn't enough of it. Like, where's more? Reprint 151. If you're gonna keep making these crappy sets and make it like that's what you want to do, at least reprint the good ones that you didn't print enough of. Because 151, still need it, still would sell it, still would buy it. Crown Zenith, hell, I'll take more Crown Zenith before more Temporal Forces. So yeah, it's I think that it's one of those things that we're gonna have to see how time will tell. But I do think that if we get that next rarity level, we get that next chase card, something like that in the next couple of sets, it'll really seriously help.
Yeah, so I I checked on eBay. On eBay, like prices are pretty cheap. Like some people are auctioning modern seal, which like I do not recommend at all. Like just if you're trying to unload like a modern sealed position, like if you're investing or just trying to flip it or whatever, like just do a buy it now listing, man. Like auctioning modern sealed is kind of dark, honestly. It's liquid, but like you're gonna get a pretty big percentage swing, like maybe 20 to 30% lower than market, and then you're gonna have to pay fees on top of that. But yeah, booster boxes are selling for like 88 to 100 on eBay. Cases are at like 580. So after fees and stuff, it's kind of at the Safari Zone pricing when you factor in fees and shipping at 580 on eBay. So kind of nuts, honestly. But
My distributor told me that
yeah,
they were sold out and oversold on Temporal Forces. He's like, do you want me to hold you any boxes? I was like, no, man, sell it out. I was like, glad to hear you sold out of it.
yeah. I
Don't
mean,
hold
like,
it for me.
yeah, I don't know. Like, it doesn't really seem like that strong of a set. But if it's like a Rebel Clash situation to where it's underprinted, maybe it appreciates. I don't know. But again, like
That's for the speculators.
it's also wild to me too that like, and again, like you get in these small communities, people want to have the new set to rip like immediately when it comes out. I totally get that, but it is wild to me that these people are paying 130. I'm like, yo, you could probably find like Brilliant Stars or like other Sword and Shield. Like you could probably get like Silver Tempest and Ancient Origin or Lost Origins or whatever for like around that same price if you did some looking on Facebook, right? So like it is kind of wild to me that people are paying 130 for Temporal Forces when it's like, again, it's probably just the enjoyment factor. They just want to like open it on release day and they're willing to pay a little bit of a price. It was sold out on the Pokemon Center. They don't want to wait for eBay to ship it. I get it, but it's like if you're trying to invest or sit on it or whatever, your money might be spent honestly buying or better spent maybe buying some of those other Sword and Shield sets that haven't really mooned yet. I think Brilliant Stars is probably the next one to take off. Like as soon as Fusion Strike got off of Pokemon Center, it went bonkers. Not bonkers, but it's going up, and I think Brilliant Stars is probably going to do the same. I mean, it's got a Charizard alt art. Like I don't know. So yeah, but people cannot survive continuing to do this at these prices again, unless, and especially the businesses that are primarily selling sealed. Like a lot of like a business like Dan or Rusty or something, like they've got so many different things going that they can afford for their sealed position to just kind of chill or not make them money, or in some cases even maybe lose them a little bit money to keep the allocation alive, to keep the relationships alive with their distributors. But a lot of these businesses where their entire business model is selling seal, it's like, yo, like y'all have kind of been getting cooked for 6, 9 months now outside of 151. Like it's been kind of rough for these people. And I just don't know how many of them can continue to survive if, like you said, Pokemon doesn't do something different to sort of get people like really hyped and incite a little bit of like urgency or FOMO in the next set. So I don't know, man. I feel for the people. Like I'm sad. I'm glad I'm not in that position to where I have to rely on these allocations and these kind of mediocre sets. But yeah, so
Yeah, I don't think I'll be really jumping to try to buy a ton of like sealed modern and hope that that's going to be my avenue for making tons of margin on it right now, because I don't think that like buying and selling on release looks like it's that great of an option, which it used to be a good option when things are limited, but as we've seen, they're not as limited anymore. So yeah, just it's good to have other avenues. Like I think the grading at the last show I was at, I will say that the graded slabs and just in general slabs, the interest is much more for some reason now. So I feel like there's more plays in grading to be had now that like people kind of stopped grading as much. It's ebbs and flows. So it's always good to have other avenues for sure. But that being said, about sealed, I feel like the most of what we've been talking about the last hour or so has been like modern sealed booster boxes, and it leads really quite well into our invest, flip, or skip for this week, because there's some crazy stuff that's been happening in sealed booster boxes in these last few weeks since we've last talked. Evolving Skies hit $750 recently in auctions.
really on
Yeah,
eBay,
on
that's
eBay.
crazy.
Yeah, it's going for greater than $700 on the regular Evolving Skies sealed booster boxes. Evolutions booster boxes are still sitting around $750. So Evolutions XY, we've seen that around for a while. It's the oldest of the sets on our list. And then the same is said for Unified Minds. Those are the lowest I could find were $750 online as well to buy, and going up the Unified Minds Sun and Moon booster box. So I
Real,
picked,
real, real
yeah,
quick, just a caveat. Evolving Skies. I'm looking at the TCG player sales, and volume is very low, but it's at like in some cases, like basically for the past week or two, like one has sold a day, and they're selling for like six to man. Like I wish I had a whiteboard behind me. I could do like a supply and demand curve and
I
illustrate this.
watched one sell transact at $700 across from me on Sunday in cash. $700, no fees, cash. One sold at a booth across from me on Sunday at the card show I was at. So I know for a fact that they are selling for higher than $700, and it's just that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're buying in person and you're somebody that's trying to break it or whatever, but like looks like, I mean, lowest list on TCG player is like 680. So I mean, yeah, it's pretty big move for sure. Dan probably still holding on to that Moonbreon. That's a probably an appreciating asset at this point. So
It's
it's kind
greater
of
than
wild.
$1,000 at this point. I think it's surpassed that $1,000 mark, or it's about to surpass it again, which is pretty good for that card. I had a raw one walk up at the show that a kid had that he had pulled. He wanted $750 for it, and it was still raw, and he pulled it himself. So I didn't even take it out of the sleeve to look at it because it was like in one of those ETB sleeves in a top loader. So I just I wasn't there for a $750 Moonbreon in the first place, even if it was gradable. And I didn't want to look at this like 8-year-old's Moonbreon and tell him that the white dot in the corner is going to mean that it's a $500 card. So, yeah. So I just didn't even look at it, which is funny because I think he was expecting, he walked up, he's like, "Hey, you want this?" And I was like, "How much?" He's like 750. I was like, "Nah." He's like, "You want to look at it?" I was like, "No, no." I think it was just the amount of not interest that it was like sort of shocking, because I think other people we brought it up to are like, oh, it's a Moonbryon, you know. Um,
Well, it looks like it's. Hold on, let me
I
pull it
think
up
it's a
on
$650 card now. I think it's went up in price.
low list is 700 on TCG player, but eBay is probably cheaper.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure that that's a good price. I'm sure that's the price that like TCG player he would want to get for it or whatever. But I'm not a
I'm not
buyer.
paying 750 in person cash, dog. Like
That's
I'm
what
not
I mean.
giving
I'm
you
not a buyer at that price when you're walking
100%
up
of
to me at
comp.
my
Like, get
yeah.
out of here in cash. Like, nah.
So I think it's just that card still has a lot of allure. That being said, the Lorcana Elsa is like more than the Moonbryon in a PSI 10. It's like
Is it
1500,
mooning?
fifteen
So
hundred
from
for
the
the
first
Elsa.
set, the Elsa.
Yeah. And
Damn, dude, that's
Raw is like
crazy.
700 or 800, I think. So she's going up as well.
That's dude. I remember we talked about it on one of the podcasts, but I remember as soon as the first set got announced, reprints, everybody's like, "I told you, Lorcana sucks. It's going to the ground," like all that stuff. And then as soon as that reprint got eaten up, dude, it started rocketing again. I don't know why people like were hate. It's like it doesn't have to be for you, but if you can't recognize the consumer demand for it, it's like y'all are kind of dusted, honestly. But that's wild. I don't even know. Let me look at the. I'm looking up the prices right now on TCG player. Damn. 800. Yeah, 800. Dang, dude. That is just like a straight line. It bottomed at 350 and it's up to $800 now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fakes out there too. There's a lot of fakes of those enchanted cards, so that drives the price of the real ones up because if it's a real copy, then it's legit, you know? So it's one of
Lowest
those
is
things.
930. That's insane, dude. Lowest is 930. That's
And the
wow.
PSA 10s are like 1500.
These are One Piece numbers, man. Holy,
Yeah.
what the? That's
Yeah,
crazy, dog.
so yeah, and it's a much easier pull. It's a much easier pull than the Moonbryon to actually pull it out of a pack and cheaper and as well to pull. So like I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, we need to do invest, flip, or skip
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah. Sorry
yeah.
for interrupting you.
We always get on the Larcana because it's just wild what happens with that game. Um, Evolving Skies, the most modern and the most meteoric rise of the three. Evolutions being the oldest and the one that's seen the most fluctuations and the most history, and then Unified Minds, sort of the dark horse. But you go first on this one?
I like the tag teams. I like Unified Minds, but I just think it has the least hype around it right now. What is it even at, right? But that would probably just like knee jerk reaction. That would probably be a skip for me. I think it's like I said, I think it's a strong set. I like Sun and Moon. I like the tag teams. It's got some. It's at. Oh, okay. Well, let me see. It's selling at. Okay, yeah, it's selling like pretty consistently around 750. Um, I don't know. Like that one might have to be. That one might have to be a skip for me because even if there's less of it out there, I just think that like less people are talking about it or remember it. Um, So I like it might do better in the long term. Like if we're talking like a 2 year time horizon type deal, but like in the next 6 months to a year, that would probably be my skip. Um, Honestly, like Evolving Skies would probably be my. Well, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think Evolving Skies works as invest and flip, but I think it probably still has some room to run. Like the performance chasing happened a lot in the stock market over the past year. Um, FOMO has happened a lot. Nvidia is like a prime case, and then that trickled into like all the other semiconductor stocks and things like that. And same sort of thing in crypto. Like Bitcoin started ripping, and then all these altcoins just went absolutely bonkers. Um, but I think Evolving Skies actually might still have some room to run. I wouldn't be surprised if like I don't know. There's two possibilities for it. Like one, maybe people that have been sitting on it, like distributors, people with big pockets, your P football Pete type deals that have maybe like a pallet of this stuff sitting in the back office that they've been investing in as a distributor. Maybe they hit the market with it. Right now, like the supply is pretty low as far as like what's listed on TCG Player. I haven't checked eBay, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ramped up to $1,000, especially if Pokemon continues to release like mediocre sets. I just think that's going to continue to drive people back to early Scarlet and Violet and also like the Sword and Shield block because they want to open not only something where the cards they pull have value, but just something that maybe feels good or they have better chances at cards that they're more into, more popular Pokemon, whatever. And so they're going to find that in sets like Fusion Strike, Evolving Skies, Brilliant Stars, blah, 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 blah. So I honestly would not be surprised if Evolving Skies hit like $1,000 by the end of the year. As crazy as that sounds, and as crazy as how much it's up even in a year, like it's almost up 100%. I want to say in the past year. So I think honestly, I would invest as nutso as it sounds. I think I might invest in Evolving Skies, and then Evolutions. It's tough. Like there's no really place to flip Evolution, or at least the cards within it, right? Unless you're hitting like a 10 on a Charizard, like you're not making money with Evolutions. Evolutions is heavily graded. The print quality is boof. But if you could buy a box for like 70% or 75% and flip it at a show to a streamer for like 85, 90%, that would be I would feel less confident in the next 6 months to 12 months in the price appreciation of Evolution. Again, has nothing to do with fundamentals and everything to do with just like demand and what people are focused on. And that is in its own right a fundamental, right? Like a supply and demand curve, supply and demand. And in some cases, like the demand curve is more important. And with Pokemon, I feel like there's certain things that can shift that demand curve far to the right. Yeah, so long-winded rant, but yeah, skip Unified, invest Evolving, and flip Evolutions. What do you think?
Interesting. I sort of agree and disagree about Evolving Skies, and that I do think it still has a little room to run, but I think it has room to crash as well. And so instead of investing in Evolving Skies because of that, I think I would flip it because out of these three sets, I definitely think I see Evolving Skies hitting 1,000 a little bit quicker than the other two do. I mean, I've already seen Evolutions hit 1,000, but that was in a different time, in a different place, different era of Pokemon. That's come and gone. So I think Evolutions is actually going to be the slowest to appreciate, even though it's the oldest, because it's already had its sort of crazy run and it's sort of the hype is worn down. And now it's just something you see kind of pop up once in a while for nostalgia. But I do think Evolving Skies will run some more in the near future, up to 1,000. Like I'm sitting here thinking about I have to raise my price on packs to $20 a pack because I raised it from $12 or no, they were 13 in Collecticon at LA. I didn't sell out at 13. I raised them to 15 at this last show. Sold a few packs at 15. Now I have to raise it to $20 because that's just in line with what the market is. And I'll probably sell more at 20 than I did at 13. So I do still think it has room to run because of where it's at and what it's doing now and all the attention it's getting. So flip Evolving Skies. Number one, flip for sure. I wouldn't be holding it though. I think holding would be hard. And I've said this since it was 200, so I've been wrong about it in the past. But Unified Minds, I believe, is one of my favorite sets of all time. It's a Sun and Moon era. It's super underprinted and compared to the other ones. And it's just one of those things you don't hear talked about a lot, but I think it has a lot of legs to run on. It's long legs to run on, I should say. And I think Unified Minds, I would be investing in. Out of the three, I would say I personally would feel more comfortable holding and watching it go up a Unified Minds booster box. I've sold those packs for $25 a pack in person. They sold quick. Whereas $25 Evolutions packs don't sell as fast as $25 Unified Minds. Evolving Skies is just, even though I don't think I could sell $25 packs right now, people are just all about it. So I would feel less confident holding it. That's why I say not invest. But I would skip evolutions, I think. So I'm flip Evolving Skies, invest Unified Minds, and skip evolutions. That's where I'm at on it for those reasons.
So for the stonk doggers that come here for the what to buy, I'm looking at the chase cards in Evolving Skies and looking at like their charts on TCG Player. Some of them are mooning and some of them have kind of hit like sort of a trading range and plateaued a little bit. I actually think that you could probably see more gains percentage wise buying a lot of those chase cards rather than buying the sealed product. Especially like I'm looking at Rayquaza, and Rayquaza is actually like down for the year. Like last April, it looks like it was up at like $300, and now the last sold today actually was 220. And when Evolving Skies came out, that was the chase card. And then when I look at stuff like Leafeon, that or not Leafeon, the Glaceon is like kind of mooning right now. The Dragonite is mooning. Like Dragonite, it looks like Nvidia on the 3-month chart. Like that, it's just like a straight rocket up. Same thing with Umbreon V. And so
I just sold an Umbreon V alternate art in at Collecticon. I did like it in a bulk deal, and I'm still regretting it because it's like going up. I did it like 80% with a bunch of other stuff.
yeah, I would not be selling these alts to stream like dude. I mean, Dragonite is just ripping. But if I had to like place a buy, if I were to do like a TCG Player buyout, I would be hitting the alts that had plateaued. I would start probably with Rayquaza because again, like $200 for that card when Umbreon is $700 raw. You know, and again, like even Dragonite is like I want to say it was like 80 to $100. Like that's a buy to me. I could easily see that Rayquaza hitting $450 and doubling in price before Evolving Skies, the booster box. I don't think that people buying. I don't think that Evolving Skies is going up because people are buying it because they want to collect it or hold it or invest in it. I think that a certain percentage of people have been buying on the way up for gains and to flip or to invest or whatever. But I think honestly, a lot of it is just getting ripped and opened. And I think it's the standout set that people really like from Sword and Shield era. I don't think that this stuff is being bought and then stuck in a closet. I think people are opening it, and I think people want the
Listen,
cards. I think
I
people want the
sold
cards.
I sold packs this weekend, right? And there people sometimes would come up and then say, "Hey, what's the best pack that you have?" And I'll say, "Well, I have a bunch of packs. The most expensive one is Evolving Skies, but I would also say it's also the worst to open, the hardest to hit in, and it's the most feast or famine." And I would always say, "I have Crown Zenith." And I would literally, they'd be like, "What should I get? That should I get one of these expensive ones or a bunch of the small?" And every time I would say, personally, me, I would buy 3 Crown Zenith packs instead of one Evolving Skies pack if you're just gonna rip them. I was like, if you're just gonna rip it, I would go with the Crown Zenith packs because it's more fun. You have more likely to hit. It's more
Hundred
cards. It's
percent. Yeah.
better, but not a single. There was 5 instances, I think, of times where this happened. Not one of them took me up on the offer for the lower, more, it's like, it's almost like people have this aversion that since it's cheaper, they don't want it. They want the expensive one because it's expensive, even if you're telling them that it's not worth it.
Well, and you have well, I don't know. I'm sure some like Danny Phantom or one of those type of YouTubers is probably make a type of video where you can talk about like EV on different Sword and Shield packs or Scarlet and Violet packs. But like you're probably more likely going to get wrecked on Evolving Skies just because the pull rates are tough and there's less pulls and a lot of the like mediocre pulls, like the ultra rare, super rare, whatever they're called in English. They're mid and they're worth nothing because people forget. People look fondly on Sword and Shield era, but forget we got V's and V Maxes during, and it was dark to hit a V or a V Max. Shouts out to 5-band graphics. Whereas, like you said, Crown Zenith, if you're just the type of consumer that's trying to have like spend 15, 20 bucks, open some packs, fill out a binder, Crown Zenith, way better value. Because out of those 4 packs, you probably are going to hit like 2 hits. Hits, not like financially, oh, I'm stonking making my money back, but like 2 cards that are worth like sleeving and sticking in the binder. Whereas Evolving Skies, you spend the 15, 20 bucks, you open it, you get nothing. Or you get like some random Pokemon, like a Greedent or like a Greedent VMAX or something. And it's like, oof. You know what I mean? So again, that's why I'm like, if I were to buy something, like if I had to make a move, like make a play on Evolving Skies, I would go hammer on that Rayquaza. I'll say this right now. It's the 19th of March when we're recording this. By July, by the end of July, the last day of July, my price prediction for Rayquaza is $325. I think it'll appreciate $100 by July.
It's not hard to see.
We'll
I've
see. We'll
seen
see what
that
happens.
card. That's what it was selling for on day 1 of release, was $325.
Yeah, I mean, it's Rayquaza. Like, it's huge. It's like Rayquaza and Umbreon are like 2 of those Pokemon that any card that they're in carries such an insane premium. And honestly, like Dragonite would probably be my second buy because like Dragonite at 80 to 100 bucks, it's like it's a sick Dragonite art. It's the only Dragonite chase card that we got out of like the last 2 eras. That's a buy to me. Like I don't know, man. Like that, I could see Dragonite ripping up to $200. Like I could see that being like a bigger person. I don't know, man. Like if these boxes keep going, I think people want the cards. I think people want the. I don't think people want the sealed product to hold or to sit on or to have FOMO. They're like, oh, if I don't buy in now, I'm never going to be able to invest in Evolving Skies. I think people want the cards. I could be wrong on that, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But that's my personal price prediction. So
we will see. That being said, though, that's podcasts. We're pretty good, pretty consistent at about 2 hours and 15 minutes. But if there's anything you want a last minute kind of add in there, anything, please let me know. And if you're watching and you want to say anything in the comments down below, we greatly appreciate that too.
I would just say last thing. Next week we're gonna try to get back on our regular schedule. So next week we're gonna try to do another live stream, and we had a lot to talk about today, and we could not fit it all in one podcast. So we've got some juicer topics for the next live stream. Appreciate everybody's support. Thank you guys for constantly watching us, commenting, all that sort of stuff. Can't thank you guys enough. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, not much more to say other than thank you. We are going to be working on a new logo and rebranding so we can get some merch working out for you guys as well. So look out for that in the future. I know we've kind of mentioned it in the past, but we've been working a little bit and down in behind the scenes on that. So look forward to that. But otherwise, follow my co-host here on his channel, so that we can you can see us next week when we go live. And we appreciate everyone for watching this one. And tell us what you want us to do in best flip or skip for down below. If you have an idea, anything you want us to see, love to hear it. And until then, we'll catch you guys next week.